Hi, David here, CEO and founder of the Freedom Founders Mastermind community. I make a little bit longer today than I normally do on a video blog, so stay tuned if this is something that interests you. I have the distinct advantage of not only my age, which I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but let's just put it this way. I've got more than a few decades of experience in the world of business and investments. I also have the privilege of being involved in kind of the backstage, if you will, of quite a few different business owners, high-level influencers, thought leaders, and investment platforms. So I'm privileged in that regard, and I certainly keep information that I have confidential, but I can speak in broad terms very easily without naming anybody or any particular person or give away identity, which is what I have to do. I like to give information to people based on my perspective and realize it's my perspective. It's my bias, and I admit to that. But again, I do have many years of experience, and the path that I have taken in my life, while it's never been a straight line, it never is. It certainly has provided me with the benefits that I speak to so strongly in my communication to people that I want to help, to serve, whether it's my Freedom Founders community or outside of that group, the next generation, who I think really has going to have a much heavier lift than I did coming out as a young adult in the late 70s and early 80s, where no doubt we had a different economy at that time than we have today, but there's a lot of similarities into what we're seeing starting now. So there's a 40-year span from when I really got started as a young adult in really 1980, let's call it. We're now 43 years later in 2023, and the dynamics of the last 40 years are changing dramatically. Notwithstanding the fact that there's always going to be market cycles that typically span about 6 to 8 years. The last one went about 14 years if you include the extra push or propulsion that we had in the post-COVID helicopter stimulation money, the trillions of dollars that the Fed added to their balance sheet to maintain the economy. It's what I call a faux economy. They did it, and there's going to be a payday. There's always a payday for when you steal from the future, which is what debt is. You're stealing from future production, and that falls on everybody, probably to a greater extent on the next generations coming up. So you can tell I care a lot. I care about this country. I care about the people I serve. I care about my family, but my family is only as good as this country is. And so if I can serve in getting a message out that some people will listen to and put themselves in a better position so that they can figuratively fight back, then that's a good thing. So let's talk a little bit about what we do in Freedom Founders and where I built my freedom plan, or what I call escape the chair, when I was able to leave my dental practice back in the mid-2000s after my daughter had suffered and survived both high-risk leukemia as a very young child, epileptic seizures thereafter, and then at age 12, she was in end-stage liver failure, and subsequently, by the grace of God and the kindness and generosity of a family who donated the organs of their child who passed away in a terrific, horrible automobile accident, my daughter survives to this day. But that was a time when I really realized that having a plan B, or having assets besides myself, I consider myself, and you should consider yourself, your primary asset, because all investment, education, adding to your efficiency, value proposition, the problems that you can solve in this world for other people, that's where our value comes from. And certainly getting the training and the education that you need to do that on whatever level you need to, that's important. So that's where we start. But if everything relies upon what we do, trading our time, our expertise, our skill set to solve other problems, if everything relies on that, then we are vulnerable, because at some point we will run out of time, we'll run out of energy, we'll run out of capabilities. We want to be able to slow down at some time. When we're young, we've got that time, we've got that energy to give, and that's where we should give it. The faster we can learn to build or acquire assets, and I'm talking about tangible assets. You may like to have some of your investments in financial products. That's fine. I'm not going to put those down. I'm just saying I like the control of tangible assets, and particularly I like business and I like real estate. And if I didn't enjoy real estate, I would probably be more of an active / passive investor in businesses. But because I learned very early the tenets of real estate and how to utilize it as a vehicle, not just to make more money, not to create more wealth, but to create more time freedom. That's really what it's all about. That's what the chase is about in our lives. It's about gaining time freedom. When you have financial freedom or financial independence based on you're not having to go to work to trade time for dollars, where you have assets that produce the income you need to live your life, then you have financial independence. Well, what does that give you? Well, some people think it's more materialism. And if that's what it is, that's fine. I'm not going to judge that. But what I really want in my life is I want more time freedom. I want to have the time to do what I want to. Does it mean I lie on the beach or play golf or tennis 7 days a week? Of course not. I want to be relevant, but I was able to change or shift gears at a mid-career point where most people would say, how could you leave, the profession in which you sunk a lot of time and capital investment in, David? How could you do that? Well, why not? Would be how I would come back. Why not? See, most people in society would never look at going through your career path that way. Most people think you get into a skill set, a career, a business, and you run that all the way to, quote, the end. Well, what's the end? Well, that's what we usually call retirement. That's somewhere in your 60s, where you conventionally retire to go live the life you've always meant to live all those 40 years that you were working. Well, I think that's out of balance, out of whack, and a lot of people today have had the wake-up call during COVID to realize that's the very case for them. They're realizing that we're all mortal, that every day, globally, every day, somewhere around 100,000 people pass away across the globe. They probably, most of them, did not know that was their last day. Now, they could have been, many of them could have been, chronically ill at the end of life, but still, you don't know when that day comes. For a lot of other people, tragedy hits in other ways, and they had no clue that their last day was coming. So what's my point? We don't have forever. We have so much time with our kids while we have them at home until they become young adults, and then they go on to become independent. It's a different stage of life. We don't necessarily lose them, but we lose the earlier ages in which we thought, well, we'll get to that when we can. All right, let's get back to the main point. The assets. The assets that will provide you the financial independence, which will give you the time freedom to do life the way you really want to do it and not wait till you get to that mystical someday of, quote, retirement. What are those based on? And in the marketplace today, we've had, again, this bull run market coming out of the 2008 Great Financial Recession. I was able and really in a position to take advantage of that because of where I was. I was out of my dental practice. I had created a network in a certain real estate market in North Texas where I've planted my roots over the last 40 years. I had private capital lenders, so I didn't have to rely on banks because realize when there's a recession and there's a credit crunch, a contraction, a liquidity crisis, which is what I believe we're entering right now, the banks don't lend. So people get mixed up. They think, well, I'll start buying assets when they go on sale. And what's the typical way people buy? Well, they leverage. And I'm not against leverage. I'm just saying you better learn a different way to leverage, like I had to do when I was coming out of college and starting my real estate portfolio at the same time I was entering dental school. I had to learn how to leverage without using banks. I had no credit. I had no credit at all. So everything I acquired from real estate standpoint, I had to do with creative financing. I leveraged like crazy. My average interest rate back in the 80s and 90s when I was building this portfolio, primarily based on single-family rentals, was 8.5%. That was my average interest rate. I still cash flowed every property after all expenses and after the debt service. I had to cash flow every property. What I did is I purposely, intentionally, what I call today, snowballed down the loans that I had. I acquired as many properties as I could. They all cash flowed. I did a lot of the management myself because I had the time. And then I took the extra money out of my dental practice where I traded time for dollars. And instead of putting it into a 401k where that money would be locked up until I was 59 and a half, I paid down those loans relatively quickly. And within 15 years, I had about 35 single-family rental properties, of which the vast majority were free and clear. And that's what allowed me to break the chains from my dental practice when I wanted to spend the time with my daughter. I bought back my time freedom is my point. Now, I was in my mid 40s when that happened. That's usually not when people can break away from their labor or active income production. But because I had started early, the compound effect of time and investing in capital assets that historically have always produced a certain level of productive, sustainable income, even throughout recessionary down cycles, and would say hedged against inflation, that's what produced my freedom.